Welcome back for another deep dive. You know we love to dig into all things AI, and today we're taking on a pretty big one, 2024, and all its ups and downs in the world of AI.
It's a big one for sure.
Yeah, and to help us navigate this landscape, we've got IEEE Spectrum's Top 10 AI Stories article as our roadmap, but we're going a little deeper than just the headlines.
Absolutely. Think of it like uncovering those hidden gems that really defined what AI was all about this past year.
Exactly. We're going beyond the buzzwords to uncover what really made AI tick. So we're talking about that whole death of prompt engineering debate.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah, we've got AI's plagiarism problem to unpack, and even how AI is shaking up the gig economy, and not always in a good way.
So many layers to peel back.
So are you ready to get into it?
Oh, absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
So one thing that really struck me about this IE Spectrum article is that it doesn't shy away from AI's, shall we say, less glamorous moments.
Right, exactly.
It really captures this feeling of everyone trying to figure out, are we on the cusp of some amazing AI utopia? Or are we, like, sleepwalking into a dystopian nightmare?
It's that tension, right? The potential and the peril kind of intertwined.
Yeah, and by focusing on chatbots and coding, which were arguably like the two hottest areas in AI this year,
Definitely.
it highlights how this tension is playing out in some very real and practical ways. What do you think about that focus?
It's really smart. You know, everyone was talking about generative AI this year.
Oh, yeah.
All the possibilities, all the potential. But this article, this deep dive we're doing, it's kind of like a reality check.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying is like, hold on, let's not get ahead of ourselves with all the hype.
Exactly. It's like with any new technology, there's that initial wave of, oh my gosh, this is going to change everything. But then we got to step back and say, okay, but what are the limitations? What are the actual breakthroughs versus the things that just sound good on paper?
I like that. A healthy dose of skepticism alongside that excitement.
It's all about finding that balance.
Okay, so let's jump into one of those, hold on a second, moments. This idea of the death of prompt engineering.
Right. What a statement.
It sounds pretty dramatic. Like, is AI really coming for the jobs of all those prompt engineers out there? What's the story there?
Well, it's definitely a provocative idea. And what Dina Jankina found in her research is that AI is becoming incredibly good at writing prompts itself.
Wow, so AI is writing the prompts for AI.
In some cases, yeah. And get this, the AI-generated prompts are sometimes even more effective than the ones crafted by human engineers, even those with tons of experience.
That's wild. So is this really the end of the line for prompt engineers then?
It's not necessarily about replacement, though. It's more like AI is becoming a really powerful tool in the prompt engineering toolkit.
So maybe it's less about death and more about, like, evolution.
Exactly. Prompt engineers might need to adapt and learn how to work with AI, collaborate to create even better prompts than either could alone.
Okay, so that's one for the prompt engineers out there to ponder. But speaking of AI possibly exceeding human capabilities, let's talk about this visual plagiarism issue.
Okay, yeah, this one's a head scratcher.
How is AI plagiarizing if it's supposed to be generating original content? That doesn't really make sense, does it?
That's the crux of the problem, right? It seems like some AI systems are spitting out outputs that are incredibly similar, sometimes even identical to stuff that already exists.
No way.
Yeah, it's a real problem, and we don't always know if it's intentional, but it raises this massive question: who owns the copyright?
Oh, that's a good point.
If AI generates something that looks plagiarized, who's responsible? The person using the AI, the people who developed it, it gets really murky legally and ethically.
Wow, AI is forcing us to rethink some pretty fundamental concepts. Like, what does it even mean to be creative anymore?
That's it, right.
Huh.
Like, how do we define originality in the age of AI?
It really hits home that AI isn't just a tech revolution, it's a societal one. We've got to adapt our laws, our whole understanding of creativity to this new reality.
Our ethical frameworks, too. Everything's up for grabs.
Okay, so we've got AI potentially putting prompt engineers out of work and maybe plagiarizing artists. What else does this article have in store for us?
Well, remember how ChatGPT was supposed to revolutionize the way we code?
Oh yeah, the coding prodigy.
Right. Well, this article dives into some research that suggests maybe ChatGPT isn't quite the coding rock star we all thought it was.
Really? Tell me more.
So initially, ChatGPT showed a lot of promise, especially for those simpler coding tasks.
Okay, yeah.
Early tests showed an impressive 89% success rate, which, got everyone really excited.
But yeah, it's a pretty good score.
But then researchers started giving ChatGPT tougher coding challenges, more complex problems.
Go.
And that's when its performance took a pretty steep nosedive. For those harder tasks, its success rate plummeted to a measly 0.66%.
Whoa, that's like night and day. What happened there? Why such a dramatic drop-off?
That's the million-dollar question, and it really gets at the core of how AI learns, right? ChatGPT, like a lot of these AI systems, is trained on huge data sets of existing code.
Okay, so it's learning by example.
Exactly. And it's really good at recognizing patterns in that code and then replicating them. But when it encounters a problem that requires a deeper understanding of programming concepts, like real problem-solving creativity,
It hits a wall.
yeah, it just doesn't know what to do.
So it's great at following instructions and repeating what it's seen, but not so good at thinking outside the box.
It's like the difference between knowing a bunch of facts and actually understanding a subject deeply enough to apply that knowledge in new and creative ways.
Okay, that makes sense. Doesn't this raise another question about coding education? Like, are students now going to become way too reliant on these AI assistants?
It's a valid concern. There's definitely a risk that students might focus less on mastering the fundamentals and more on, well, the AI can just do it for me.
Yeah, just plug in the problem and get the answer.
Exactly. But here's the thing. I think there's also an opportunity here. A lot of educators are recognizing that we need to shift the focus of how we teach coding.
Interesting. So how do we do that?
Instead of just teaching syntax and rules, we need to emphasize problem decomposition.
Okay, what does that mean?
It's that ability to break down these big, complex problems into smaller, more manageable steps that, yes, an AI assistant can help with, but you still need that human brain power driving the process.
I see. So it's like instead of replacing coders altogether, AI is actually pushing them to become better, more strategic thinkers.
That's a really good way to put it. It's raising the bar for what it means to be a truly skilled coder in this new AI-powered world.
Wow, that's a really fascinating shift. And it's not just the coders who are feeling AI's impact. Remember that story about Shipt and its delivery drivers?
Oh, yeah, that one's a doozy.
Tell me more about that one.
So this story is really interesting because it highlights how AI can be used in ways that are totally opaque.
Okay, what do you mean by opaque?
Like hidden, unclear, even potentially exploitative.
Doesn't sound good.
So Ships, they implemented this new algorithm to determine how much their drivers would get paid.
Okay, that makes sense. A lot of companies are doing that.
But the thing is, they didn't explain how this algorithm actually worked to the drivers themselves.
Whoa, so the drivers were basically at the mercy of this algorithm that they didn't even understand.
Exactly. And a lot of the drivers, they started noticing these significant drops in their pay seemingly out of nowhere.
That would be so frustrating.
Incredibly frustrating. They couldn't figure out why their earnings were going up and down so much because they had no idea how this algorithm was making those decisions.
Oh, I can only imagine. So what did the drivers do about it? I mean, it doesn't sound like they had much recourse.
What's amazing is that they didn't just sit back and take it. These drivers, they banded together and started meticulously collecting data on their own pay.
Wow, really?
Yeah, they were tracking their hours, the number of deliveries they made, everything, trying to find some kind of pattern.
Like citizen scientists almost.
It's a great analogy, and they teamed up with a researcher who helped them develop a text bot that could analyze all those pay receipts.
What? A text bot?
Yeah, it was super clever. The text bot was trying to reverse engineer the algorithm's logic.
That's incredible. And what did they find out?
Well, their little investigation revealed that a whopping 40% of Ships drivers had actually gotten pay cuts because of this new algorithm.
That's a huge number.
Right. And it's a stark reminder of how AI can be used in ways that lack transparency and can potentially exploit workers, especially in the gig economy where, let's be honest, there often aren't many worker protections to begin with.
It's a pretty sobering thought. We need to be demanding more transparency and accountability from companies that are using AI, especially when it directly impacts people's livelihoods.
We can't just trust that AI will be used ethically and fairly. We've got to be vigilant.
And this whole situation brings us to another big concept, something you've probably heard before. The black box problem in AI.
Yeah, the infamous black box.
I've heard the term, but I'm not sure I totally understand it. Can you explain it like I'm 5?
Okay, so imagine this. Neural networks, which have become incredibly popular in AI, especially since, like, 2012 with AlexNet,
Yeah.
they're really, really good at certain tasks, like recognizing images, for example. They can be super accurate, but here's the catch. they often don't tell us how they arrived at their conclusions. It's like they're doing all these calculations inside this black box that we can't see into.
So we get the results, but we don't know how the AI got there.
It's a bit unnerving, isn't it? Especially when we're talking about AI making decisions that have real-world consequences. If we don't understand how the AI reached its conclusions, how can we trust those decisions?
Right. It's like someone telling you, do this, but they won't tell you why.
Exactly. It's a major challenge, especially as AI becomes more integrated into, every aspect of our lives.
We need to be able to trust the AI systems that are making decisions that affect us, and that trust comes from understanding how they work.
Transparency is key. But before we get too deep into the dark side of AI, let's switch gears for a moment.
Okay. I could use a little optimism right now.
Yeah, me too. So the article talks about this really cool example of how Bengaluru is using AI to try and tackle its infamous traffic problems.
Oh yeah, the traffic in Bengaluru is legendary. I've heard stories of people being stuck in jams for hours.
No joke. It's a rapidly growing city, but its infrastructure hasn't quite caught up, and that's led to some of the worst traffic congestion in the world. But they're trying to address it with AI, and it's actually pretty impressive.
So how are they using AI to combat those traffic jams?
They're using AI to create models that can analyze traffic patterns in real time.
Okay, makes sense.
These models can predict where congestion is likely to build up, and they can even identify those events that are likely to draw huge crowds.
Wow, so it's like they're anticipating the traffic problems before they even happen.
Exactly. It's about being proactive rather than reactive. By knowing where those potential bottlenecks are going to be, the city can implement more effective traffic management strategies.
Smart. That's a really cool application of AI, using it to solve real-world problems that affect millions of people.
Right. And they're not stopping there. They're planning on incorporating data from policy researchers into these AI models to make their traffic management even more intelligent and comprehensive.
That's so encouraging. It's good to hear about AI being used for positive change,
Huh.
but we've also seen in this article, AI has a darker side, and the article touches on the potential for AI image generators to be used for some really disturbing purposes.
Yeah, that's something we can't ignore.
Can we talk about that?
Absolutely. This is a really important, albeit difficult, topic to discuss. Policy researchers David Evan Harris and Dave Wilner, they've done some important work highlighting how certain AI models, even ones that are designed for seemingly harmless things like creating images,
Right.
they can be manipulated to generate content that is not only illegal, but incredibly harmful.
I'm guessing we're talking about child sexual abuse material.
You are, and their research specifically calls out Stable Diffusion versions 1.5 and 2. These are widely available, on platforms like Hugging Face and Civitai.
And those platforms are used by a lot of people.
Exactly, millions of downloads, so it's a real concern.
It's just another example of why we need to be so careful with this technology. We need safeguards, regulations, ethical frameworks. We can't just assume that AI will always be used for good.
Absolutely. And that's something that the sociologist we're about to talk about really observed firsthand. He spent a significant amount of time embedded in a San Francisco startup, observing how AI was being used and developed.
Okay, this sounds fascinating. Tell me more about the sociologist's experience.
So he spent 19 months.
Wow, a year and a half.
Yeah, immersed in this world of a San Francisco startup that had quickly reached, unicorn status.
You mean $1 billion valuation?
Exactly. After receiving tons of venture capital investment, so he had this front row seat to the AI boom, and what he noticed was that a lot of what's marketed as pure AI magic is actually heavily reliant on human labor.
Interesting. So it's not all algorithms and self-learning machines.
It's much more nuanced than that. And he has this really thought-provoking quote, simulating the output of software algorithms that had yet to be completed.
Whoa, that's a mouthful. What does that even mean?
It's a great quote, right? It's basically saying that there's a lot of human effort going into creating this illusion of AI autonomy. Like humans are doing a lot of the heavy lifting behind the scenes.
I see. So it's not always this clear-cut case of AI taking over human jobs. Sometimes it's more about AI augmenting human capabilities or even relying on human input in ways that we don't always see.
That's it, exactly. It's a much more complex relationship than it's often portrayed.
Okay, I think we need to take a break and unpack all of this.
Yeah, let's take a moment to digest all this AI goodness.
So much to think about. But when we left off, we were talking about that sociologist who was embedded in that AI startup, right?
Yeah, and that quote about simulating the output really stuck with me.
Me too. It's like, what does that even mean in practice?
Well, it really challenges this idea that AI is this, totally independent force, right?
Yeah, like it just magically knows what to do.
Exactly. But the reality, at least from what this sociologist observed, is that there are often a lot of humans behind the curtain, so to speak.
Oh, pulling the levers and making sure the AI does what it's supposed to.
Sometimes, yeah. And it makes you wonder, like, how much of what we see as AI is really just, human intelligence and effort dressed up in fancy algorithms.
Right. It blurs the lines a bit, doesn't it?
It definitely complicates things, and I think it has huge implications for how we think about responsibility and accountability with AI.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, if we believe that AI is making decisions completely on its own, it becomes really easy to just kind of like absolve the humans who created it and who are using it from any ethical considerations.
It's like saying, oh, the AI did it, not us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's not a very responsible or realistic way to approach this technology, is it?
Not at all. AI is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. And it's the humans wielding that tool who ultimately bear the responsibility.
I totally agree. We can't just shift the blame to algorithms. AI is a human creation, and we need to own the consequences of its actions, both positive and negative.
And that brings us back to that shipped story, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really highlights the need for transparency when we're talking about AI systems that are making decisions that impact people's
Close
lives.
to their livelihoods, like in the case of those ship drivers.
Exactly. When an algorithm is deciding how much someone's going to get paid, those people deserve to understand how that algorithm works.
At the very least, yeah.
They need to be able to question it, challenge any potential biases that might be baked into the system.
Transparency is so crucial for building trust, right?
It's foundational. And without trust, how are we going to successfully integrate AI into society in a way that benefits everyone?
It feels like we keep coming back to this theme of balancing the potential of AI with the very real risks and ethical concerns that come with it.
And that's really what this whole deep dive, this whole article is about, isn't it? The hype versus the reality of AI in 2024.
It feels like almost every story we've discussed, from the prompt engineering stuff to those coding challenges to this whole gig economy situation, it all highlights that tension.
Yeah, the tension between what AI could be and what it actually is right now.
And the potential consequences of not addressing those gaps. Like even with the Bengaluru traffic example, as cool as it is that they're using AI to tackle this huge problem,
Right.
there are still those questions about, data privacy and surveillance.
Absolutely. Like if they're collecting all this data to make the traffic flow better, what's to stop that data from being misused? How do we balance the benefits of AI with the potential risks to individual privacy?
It's a tough question, and one that we need to be asking more and more as AI becomes more powerful and more pervasive.
We can't just get caught up in the excitement of the technology without thinking about the potential downsides.
It's about being critical, being thoughtful, not just blindly buying into every promise that AI makes.
Exactly. And I think it requires a more holistic, multidisciplinary approach to AI development.
Meaning what?
Like, it's not just about the engineers and data scientists, right? We need ethicists, we need social scientists, policymakers, everyday people to be part of this conversation about how AI is developed and used.
Yeah, it's got to be a broader societal conversation.
Exactly. We need to move beyond the hype, beyond those sensationalized headlines, and really engage in thoughtful discussions about both the potential benefits and the risks of AI.
And figure out how we can harness its power for good while also mitigating the potential harms.
And make sure that its development aligns with our values as a society.
And that brings us back to that really tough topic that we touched on earlier. The potential for AI to be used to create harmful content.
Yeah, we can't shy away from that, even if it's uncomfortable.
The fact that AI image generators are being used to create child sexual abuse material, it's horrifying, but we have to talk about it.
Absolutely. The work that those researchers, David Evan Harris and Dave Wilner, did, it exposed a really dark side of this technology. And even though those models weren't intended to be used for that purpose, the fact that they can be manipulated in that way is a huge red flag.
It shows that we need to be proactive, right? We can't just hope that AI will be used for good.
Right. We need to be thinking about the potential for misuse from the very beginning.
We need to be putting safeguards in place, establishing clear ethical guidelines, and holding people accountable when those lines are crossed.
It's about education and awareness, too. Developers need to understand the potential consequences of their work, and the public needs to be informed about the risks associated with this technology.
We need to create this culture of responsible AI development and use where ethical considerations are at the forefront.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between fostering innovation and protecting against the potential harms.
It's a delicate balance, for
Yeah.
sure, but it's one we've got to strive for.
Because ultimately, the future of AI isn't some preordained thing.
Right. It's not set in stone.
We're shaping it right now through the choices we make. And that's, both exciting and a little bit terrifying.
The stakes are high, aren't they?
But we have this incredible opportunity to steer AI development in a direction that aligns with our values and benefits all of humanity.
Okay, so as we start to wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways that you think our listeners should keep in mind as they continue to navigate this, rapidly evolving world of AI?
I think the biggest one is to remember that AI isn't this one-size-fits-all thing. It's a collection of technologies, each with its own strengths and weaknesses, and we can't assume that all AI is created equal, or that it's going to magically solve all of our problems.
So a healthy dose of skepticism is still warranted.
Absolutely. We need to look beyond the hype and really understand what AI can and can't do.
And where those potential pitfalls might be.
Exactly. And that means staying informed, being critical of the information that's out there, and not being afraid to ask tough questions.
It sounds like we're talking about a real shift in mindset.
Yeah, like we can't just be passive consumers of AI technology. We have to be active participants in shaping how it's integrated into our lives.
So what's one question that our listeners should keep in mind as they continue to explore the world of AI? A question that can help guide their thinking and their engagement with this technology.
Ooh, that's a good one. I think the question is, how can we ensure that AI is developed and used in a way that aligns with our values and benefits all of humanity?
That's a big one.
It is a big one, and there's no easy answer, but it's a question that we all need to be grappling with, especially as AI becomes more and more integrated into, every aspect of our lives.
It's a question that forces us to think beyond just the technical aspects of AI and consider its broader societal impact.
Exactly. And it reminds us that we all have a role to play in shaping the future of this incredibly powerful technology.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have, from the highs to the lows, the hype to the reality of AI in 2024. It's been quite a journey.
We've seen how AI is being used to solve these really complex problems like traffic congestion, but we've also seen how it can be used in ways that are, less than ideal.
We've talked about the importance of transparency and accountability, and we've emphasized that ethical considerations need to be front and center in any conversation about AI development.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some final thoughts that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that AI is not this, predetermined force. It's something that we're actively shaping through the choices that we make every single day.
So it's not a question of if AI is going to change the world, but how.
Exactly. And we all have the power to influence that how.
And that's both exciting and a little bit scary, but ultimately it's empowering.
I think so too.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it informative, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
It's been a pleasure.
And for our listeners, if you're looking to learn more about these incredible AI stories that we discussed, we highly recommend checking out the full Top 10 AI Stories of 2024 article on the IEEE Spectrum website.
It's a great read.
And until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep questioning. And we're back, wrapping up our AI deep dive, exploring all those twists and turns in the world of AI in 2024.
It's amazing how much we've unpacked, from prompt engineering to coding, even AI's impact on gig workers. It's clear that AI is touching so many aspects of our lives.
Absolutely. And as we close out this conversation, what are some of those big picture takeaways you think our listeners should really hold on to?
Well, one thing that keeps coming up is that AI isn't this monolithic thing, right? It's not one size fits all. It's this whole collection of different technologies with their own strengths and weaknesses. We can't just assume all AI is created equal or that it's going to magically solve all our problems.
Like we've been saying, we need to be realistic. Look beyond the hype and really get a sense of what AI can and can't do.
Yeah, and that means being informed, being critical of the information we come across, and not being afraid to ask those tough questions about how AI is being developed and used.
That's like we need to become more discerning consumers of AI, right? Not just accepting everything we hear at face value.
Exactly. And even more than that, we need to be active participants in shaping how AI is integrated into our lives. It's not just something that's happening to us.
Yeah, we have a say in how this all unfolds. The future of AI isn't predetermined. It's something we're actively creating through the choices we make, individually and as a society.
And that's a powerful realization, isn't it? We're not just along for the ride. We're at the wheel.
So as our listeners continue to explore the world of AI, what's one question they should keep top of mind? Something to guide their thinking and their engagement with this technology.
How can we ensure AI is developed and used in a way that aligns with our values? How do we make sure it truly benefits humanity as a whole? It's a big question, no easy answers, but it's crucial that we keep asking it, keep wrestling with it.
It's a question that pushes us to look beyond the technical stuff and really grapple with the societal impact of AI. It reminds us that we all have a role to play in shaping its future. Well, on that note, a huge thank you to you for joining us for this deep dive. It's been a fascinating conversation.
It has. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, we hope you found this exploration of AI in 2024 insightful and thought-provoking. If you're eager to dive deeper into these stories, be sure to check out the full Top 10 AI Stories of 2024 article on the IEEE Spectrum website. And until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep questioning the world around you.